In the NBA, the game can change in an instant, but no matter how the action unfolds, you know DraftKings Sportsbook has your back. This week, new customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets just for betting $5 on basketball. Win or lose, you get an instant dub.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code Jenkins, Jenkins. Jenkins. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on basketball. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code Jenkins. The crown is yours. Welcome to Jenkins and Jonez on the Volume Podcast Network. It is Saturday, December 16th, and we are so excited. We're going to jump straight into it. We've got one of our favorite people to talk to, Hanif Abdurraqib, acclaimed author, one of our favorite people in the world on Jenkins and Jonez, and most importantly right now, a Minnesota Timberwolves fan. Hanif, thanks for hopping on with us.
Thanks for having me again. It's always good to be here with y'all.
We appreciate you making the time, my brother. So, how is everything, man? You know, we're going to do a little deeper dive into your Timberwolves fandom of the moment of this season, you know, but we just want to get just a broad overview. How are you feeling about the season right now, man? Y'all are on top of the world right now.
Yeah, I've never felt better. I haven't felt this good since the KG MVP season. And even that felt, I probably feel better, honestly, because the KG MVP season was kind of like a crescendo of a moment. You know, KG was kind of, this felt entirely unlikely. And so I'm on cloud nine. I'm on cloud nine cautiously right now, you know, as those things go.
For sure.
I've never those words have never been spoken in the history of the English language. I'm cautiously on cloud nine. I love that.
This feels more real than other Timberwolves, teams or successful moments, right? Though,
yeah, yeah, it does. It feels more real in part because, they're also. I think after that Celtics win early in the season, I thought it could be real. Then they've kind of torn off some wins. I know they've gotten some. I know we're going to talk about it more, but they've gotten some luck. They've gone against some folks who, are like missing players and all that, but. The defense, I think the defense looks real. The defense seems like it's real, which the defense in Minnesota has not looked real for at least 2 decades now. So, I feel optimistic.
Yeah. Also, 03-04, they were, the Kobe and Shaq Lakers. They were the Timmy Spurs. We knew Minnesota ain't have a chance. And they had a good showing that year. They went to the Western Conference Finals, so hats off to them for that. But
all right, well,
yeah,
Tyler...
the West is warm. The West is more wide open now, I think. I mean, and it's just kind of a thing where, a lot of these teams, folks just aren't staying healthy or folks aren't playing the full 82. And I think there's some determination, at least so far, out of the Timberwolves, out of Rudy and Cat specifically, to just play through whatever, play hurt, play whatever it takes. And hopefully that keeps up.
For sure.
Hopefully that keeps up with no consequences is always
you feel me?
As a Anthony Davis follower, right? So Tyler's said we got to start with, and he's right. We just had this. This actually feels like a sports story that is custom made for you being on Jenkins and Jonez. But we have to talk about game ball gate, I guess is what we're calling it, with the Bucks and the Pacers. This is I feel like why basketball is the NBA is so addicting. It's stuff like this just comes out of nowhere, that you have this great budding rivalry with the Bucks and the Pacers. Giannis gets put back in the game, scores 64 points, in a blowout. And then you literally have video leaked of a locker room hallway confrontation where he's yelling, "Give me the fucking ball!" And the Pacers players, 6'8" professional athletes, are yelling at each other, "Don't give him the fucking ball!"
Did you see the video? Did you see the angle where the dude is trying to hang on to the back of Giannis's jersey?
Yes. Why?
And that motherfucker looked like he was on a sled.
Right? His feet were off the ground, dog. Both of them. Trying to stop a full speed Giannis, bro. Come on, man. What are you doing, bro? They don't pay you enough.
You had to try.
Yeah, that's for real. That's the thing is no matter what the salary is, it's not enough for that. It's not for me. It's not enough for It's interesting because no one really interviewed who scored the point for the Pacers. It was Oscar Tshiebwe.
Oscar Tshiebwe.
Yeah.
No one actually really talked to him. We don't actually know how much that motherfucker wanted the ball. And so,
and we know it was bullshit because they played the whole, it's his first NBA points. He technically had him in the in-season tournament, right? No one is. I don't think there's any hoop out here saying, well, technically I didn't count in the game book, so that's not technically my first point. No, motherfucker, you were out there against NBA talent. You scored an NBA talent. Those are your first NBA points, bro.
First points.
Yeah.
It felt like it felt to me like he was probably like, no, I don't really want. I'm cool. I don't need the ball. But the Pacers, me and Petty were like, we're gonna get you the. Don't worry, we got you. We're gonna get you. And he's like, no, it's good, it's good. And they're like, no, man, we'll get you the ball. It was so bizarre because I'd never seen Giannis that angry, like visibly. Even with that ladder shit the other year, last year, or whatever, he wasn't that angry. And also, the other funny part about that angle where motherfucker was being dragged on his jersey was Thanasis was right behind him on the left.
Hey, Thanasis be ready to go, dog. He don't play beyond big bro.
Bro, you saw the video of him getting slammed to the ground and Thanasis being held back by like 2 or 3 people. I'm like, that's the only way to love somebody, especially your brother, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Your brother,
like, he always ready.
Your whole family's life, bro. He's not in the league without Giannis. Let's just keep it on it, you know? But
I ain't gonna say that. Go ahead.
But
he's still selling candy.
You gonna say he's still gonna be selling watches and
we
come
go,
up story
we
of the
go.
section.
Yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, you know, my whole thing is I don't get the people who are actually taking this seriously. You know what I'm saying? I love how ridiculous it is. I love how everyone involved is being ridiculous. Because my whole thing is, bro, I don't care how we get to a rivalry as long as we get there. And it looks like we're going to get there with these two squads. It seems like there's some genuine animosity being built up. You know what happened in the in-season tournament with Halliburton talking this shit doing the Dame Time celebration after he zipped them boys up. You know, then we have this moment where they're being petty as fuck. Of course, you give the guy who just had 64 points on his own floor the game ball. Everybody fucking knows that, right? You know what I'm saying? But then there being some dickheads on purpose. Then you got Rick Carlisle, you know, going in the post game, you know, talking about, you know, still sticking to the story about how they got it for their rook and all. And like I said, I just love how everyone is being ridiculous. Like I said, I don't care how we get to a rivalry as long as we get there. And I hope we get a matchup between these two in the playoffs.
Carlisle said like an assistant coach got his rib broken or something. Which,
no, it was the
bruise,
GM.
right? It's bruised, right? Yeah.
It felt like a little bit like that shit where after the Will Smith slap, that white dude was like, he could have killed him. Yeah. When Carlisle was like, my coach got his rib broken, I was like, come on, brother. I
don't know, but yeah. But either way, he should have sat his old ass out at the frame. Once you see 7-foot Giannis, you know, on a mission, it's time to sit your old ass down, dog. Like, for real. Why are you hopping out there on the front lines in front of that?
He laid it on so thick, he was like, he got his rib bruised at the very least. So that happened.
Fucking Rick Carlisle, man.
If they were to play, how do you think that series would go? I think it's probably 5 or 6, bro. You know what I mean? I think it'd be fun. If fun, 5 or 6. You know what I mean?
Listen, if you're going to get the pissed off Giannis who going to hang 60 on him, like, you know what I'm saying? Oh, it's going to be light work. Yeah, it's going to be
light. But I think it's going to be light work either. The Pacers can't guard anybody.
Right.
It's going to be light work either way. I mean, granted, that showing in the in-season tournament was real,
right.
But they can't defend. I mean, these motherfuckers are giving up like 140 points every other night. They can't defend on the 3-point line. They can't defend on the inside.
Did you see the Giannis shot chart? It's just Giannis one big blob at the cup, dog.
It's one circle. Every shot was touching the other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, shot
dunk.
I think the thing with the Pacers is they're kind of like, it's funny because Tyrese Halliburton got traded away from the Kings, and now he's playing on a team that's kind of like the Kings were last year, where it's just they can't defend, and they're fun. I love watching them. I'm literally going to Minnesota tomorrow to watch the Wolves and Pacers game in Minneapolis. So like I'm excited to see them, but they can't defend anybody. And when you get to the playoffs, like you got to be able to at least not give up 130 points. And the Pacers haven't given up less than 110 points since like Halloween. I just don't see it. They're going to be so fun to watch in the regular season for sure. I love Tyrese Halliburton. They just don't have they have no interest in even trying to defend.
The Bucks are better. Will get better at it, but that's their issue too. Their defense is not the same as it's been before. So I mean, it's going to be a who can outscore the other type game. You know what I mean? And if Giannis is dropping 64, we know who that'll be. But if he's not, it might be interesting. But I think, like you said, it'll probably go 5 at most. You know what I mean?
I love how the Pacers went and got MMAer James Johnson. Hours after this kerfluffle, they went back to the crib and got big bro. Like, hey, like shit's getting real, dog. Like, we need you out here. Yeah, that shit was hilarious right there, bro.
I mean, the shot chart, Giannis's shot chart looks like every dad playing with their kid who's right on the cusp of puberty. Like, it's like, oh, it's coming. Like, I just got to back him down for 45 minutes straight. Like, and so when that happens, you have to go get someone that's like, I'm gonna punch him and see if he punches me back, and we both get kicked out, right? Like that's that has to be the strategy. I'm glad we all morally agree that Giannis deserves the game ball. That was the dumbest part of the discourse to me. It was like Oscar Shibwe.
Did you know who he was prior to this?
I did, because I enjoy learning how to pronounce people's names. So I do know who Oscar Shibwe is.
Is that the dude who was like the best college rebounder ever? Is that his claim to fame?
Yeah. At Kentucky. Yeah.
But to Tyler's point, it was like he hit a free throw in the in-season tournament. I understand why statistically the final didn't count as like the stats or whatever, but it was the most watched regular season game in like 10 years, and he scored a point in it. So I think we can all agree that to him that was probably significant to worry the game ball. But but Hanif made a great point. We haven't heard from Oscar Shibwe. Like they've made him into the Franz Ferdinand of the NBA. Like Giannis could end up signing with the Lakers or something to beat the Pacers if they get good enough. Like this could be a decade-long hatred that stemmed out of them saying we have to get him the ball.
That's that good old-fashioned rookie hazing there right there, bro. Like sometimes you got to take them lumps. Sometimes you got to pay for everyone's dinner. Sometimes you got to do people's laundry. Sometimes you got to let the whole squad lie on you. You know what I'm saying? That's just the initiation of being an NBA player. Rookie hazing shit.
I mean, in terms of as far as rookies go this season, not a lot of them there's not a whole lot of them who are helping their teams immediately. So this is one way.
Yeah, got to contribute how you can, man. That's how you stay in the league. Doing the shit that doesn't show up on the box score, shit like that.
That's perfect. Okay, not the only story, not the only pro wrestling style storyline going in the NBA. Obviously, we talked a little bit about Draymond's flailing, spinning, backhanded punch of Nurkic on the last pod, but since we recorded, the NBA has handed down an indefinite suspension, which is usually reserved for fugitives or something.
Actual law breaking. You know, what I'm
right?
saying?
Like, you don't usually see an indefinite suspension. I can't really even think of one in any pro sport. What was, all your guys, Hanif, you first? What was everyone's reaction to it? The suspension, and what do you think of where Draymond is at right now?
I'll say this: the responses from his peers are like they're talking about this motherfucker like he's the Joker. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're talking about him like he needs to be institutionalized. Which I think actually, there's I think on a serious note, there's a useful conversation that could be had about mental health in sports, particularly with men, that I don't think is being had because everyone is pre-diagnosing Draymond as a way of kind of absolving him, when he himself has not been like these are things I struggle with, but. For a long time, Draymond, I think, has seemed to struggle with impulse control and anger and just kind of knowing what is useful to help a team and what isn't. And I don't think to me, it came to a head a while ago, but this year has been, I think, uniquely bad. And I think that it aligns with the fact that his skills are diminishing a bit. And his skill set relies on, Curry, shooting is if you can shoot, you're always going to be able to shoot. You're always going to do all right in the league. And even Clay with the injuries can still have some nights. Last night he had a night, And Draymond, though, he's losing some of those abilities, and it seems like that is visibly frustrating him. The thing with Nurkic the other night, and the thing with Gobert, honestly, to me, were examples of him going a bit too far because he doesn't understand why he is in a, the Gobert thing was wild because it was like, all right, man, you held on to that chokehold for a long ass time. You know what I mean? Like
that shit was deeper than rap right there.
It's like, you've been waiting to do that. How sometimes like you don't really want to fight somebody, but if the opportunity arises, you might as well, and it felt like one of those things where it was like, okay, I'll separate from Clay, but while I'm here, you know what I mean? And I worry about just kind of the state of the Warriors. It's overall, it's kind of strange to see the Warriors in a position where they don't even look kind of competitive, and they look like they're just being surpassed. And I think a large part of this is because the Warriors thought a few years ago, they were like, oh, we're going to replenish with this youth movement. We're going to get Kuminga and Moody and Wiseman, and they're going to kind of extend our run. But those motherfuckers can't play. At least they can't play the way they thought they could. And I think that, too, has put Draymond in a position where he has to play more minutes and do more things than he maybe wants to be doing at this stage of his career. And I think that shortens the fuse in him. And so we've seen him kind of crash out a few times. I don't really know what it's going to look like for him in terms of this suspension, but or the rest of his career, honestly, because I don't know how much he has left to help a team.
Yeah. Where I'm at with it, and it's kind of a serious angle I have with it too a bit, because I had to take a step back from, and examine the reaction I had to it, right? Because when I, got the news about how it's going to be, indefinite, he's going to be able to practice with the squad. They're working on, trying to, get to the root cause of the anger and snuff it out from there. And I was like, this feels like shockingly considerate, punishment for a dude who's got the rap sheet that Draymond has. And like I said, I took a step back there because I'm like, okay, I'm sounding like a cop. I wanted the fist to come down a little harder than it did, and I need to examine that, right? So I was like, I think that this punishment is like, it's kind of a good litmus test on where perhaps you stand on how you like your justice. Do you like it to be punitive, or do you like it to be like rehabilitative? You know what I mean? And I don't think we've ever quite seen a suspension that was, kind of that came from this angle where we're trying to help this guy. We're trying to make sure this doesn't happen again. We're not going to punish him for, of course this is a punishment of sorts, but we're not just going to say, okay, 15 games, we're washing our hands of you, you figure it out, right? Like, they're taking a very proactive step and helping this man, rehabilitate and take the steps forward to make this not happen again. So that's something that's interesting to me. And I can completely understand the people who are like, I don't understand if you can rehabilitate this dude. This is who he's been, right? Like, if he didn't wake up after he blew a finals with the tantrum, if he didn't wake up after he snuffed the guy who was going to be the franchise's future. I know Jordan Poole is probably the biggest laughingstock in the league right now, but when he punched Jordan Poole in his shit, that dude was the third best player on a championship team. You know what I mean? Like, he was supposed to be the future. And I can understand people saying, okay, if he blew the finals, if he literally punched the future of the franchise in the face and fractured that relationship so bad that they had to move on from him, what is a little, spin around discus slap of Nurk gonna, changing his life trajectory? So, but like I said, I'm just at the point where we've never quite seen a punishment like this from the NBA. So I'm curious to see if, like, this rehabilitative approach will actually get through to Draymond. And I'm going to be honest, I'm skeptical. I don't think it will, but.
I mean, if anything would get through to him, it'd probably be this. You know what I mean? Just giving them 10 games, 15 games, or whatever they were planning on giving them and saying, hey, I don't think that would have necessarily worked. But I think it makes me think if there's something more going on behind the scenes. You know what I mean? Like, we talk about the legacy thing. Like, everybody's talking about, his legacy, he's affecting his legacy. I think maybe the league kind of sees that. Like what's going on with Draymond, and, what can we do to help him help himself? Because I think there may be more going on than just like, just that hit. I mean, it seems like he's had these issues over time, and it just seems like you said, Hanif, like this year it seems a little worse than before, a little different. So, I'm glad they're taking this approach too. I'm glad they're taking this approach. Like, we're gonna help you help yourself, and but like if this can't help him, I don't know what can. You know what I mean?
Can I ask a sub question that is only tangential because his name got brought up? Do y'all think Jordan Poole can play basketball? Like, just straight up. So,
in what context?
I think he can hoop. I think he can hoop. I don't think he can play basketball.
Right.
I think the way he plays, he's out here hooping like he's playing 21. He's not playing basketball as if there's zebras and 4 other players on his team out there. You know what I mean?
I really struggle to see it. I know that when he was at Golden State, I saw the same things. I mean, I saw the same shit everybody else saw. I was like, this is a player. I've watched a couple of those Wizards games this year, and I'm like, what is this motherfucker doing? It's true. Like, you're right. He's hooping. He's just hooping. Which, I mean,
straight vibes.
I have a soft spot in my heart for.
Is it good vibes?
It's bad. It's bad vibes, but it's vibes.
There are vibes there, but
they're vibes. Right? They're not a good nature. But that's just kind of the Warriors basketball kind of it polishes guys up a bit. You know what I mean? Like granted, we saw the groundwork for the way that he was going to play this season happen, right? Like, he was a guy who would go rogue, who would frustrate the shit out of his Warriors teammates. But that was because he was going off script. He wasn't doing what he was supposed to do, what the scheme called for and shit like that, right? He was just going rogue. But now, there is no playbook. There is no such thing as Wizards culture. You know what I'm saying? So he's just got free reign out there. Like, you got to understand, the Warriors are someone who turned JaVale McGee into a high IQ player, right? Like, Warriors basketball, Warriors culture is a very real thing, and it couldn't get through to him, and that's probably why they cut ties.
I think it did get through to him. He had a bad moment in these last playoffs, though. he looked great for a year and a half, solid. And then this last playoffs, he didn't look as good. You know what I mean? And I think part of them falling apart is they put a lot in Jordan Poole as well. And that didn't work out. They got rid of him. And you know what I mean? So, as well as Kuminga and other players not stepping up how they playing. But yeah.
I just also think basketball, we look at it, you know, we see it on the same screen and you see roughly the same things happening in each game. But more than any other pro team sport in America, it's so individualized. And some individuals at their job, whether it's like writing or playing basketball, benefit from structure and lots of direction. And like, because the Warriors culture has not worked out for some players too, right? That's like, it's not just you put them there and they raise everyone by 10 points on 2K or something like that. Like, he seems to benefit from, and you can feel him chafing against it almost like physically sometimes, the structure of what the Warriors were running. And yeah, then you just kind of like open the fence and say, go run free. And like, he and Kuz are creating a Wizards culture. It's just not the culture you would want to be on Twitter every night, probably, right?
I think he's also playing from a
man. Yeah, that Gilbert Arenas fucking era, bro. That Gilbert Arenas,
that's Wizards culture. Yeah. Wizards culture is niggas bringing guns in the locker room.
Niggas shitting in shoes and shit like that. Gilbert Arenas shat in a motherfucking shoe, bro. Because he owed him money from a car game. He dropped a load in a motherfucking shoe.
Who was this?
Really happened?
Whose shoe did he shit in?
You gonna make me Google the
was
shoe
it Javaris Crittenden? No, it wasn't.
Crittenden might have put that motherfucker in the dirt.
Hey, he brought the gun for Javaris. Yeah, I think he owed Javaris money, right? Is that why?
It all came down to the plane, to them card games on the plane. Like that was the genesis of it.
I've been angry enough to endanger my own life several times. I've never been angry enough to involve
Andre Blatch.
Shitting.
Jackson just said Andre Blatch.
Oh,
yeah.
Damn.
Have y'all ever been angry enough to involve poop in your response to something?
In someone else's shoe? Or just in something? No.
We don't have his mind, though. Gil has a particular mind. You know what I mean? That was probably the first thought he had. You know what I mean? That would be like the 27th of mine. Yeah, I have to go through a Rolodex of thoughts prior. But yeah, that was probably the first thought he had. I think Poole is playing from a place of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not shitting in nobody's shoe for any reason, but certainly not for revenge.
That's just wild, bro.
The last point on Draymond I want to make, because Hanif brought it up, and I've kind of thought similar things. Is it does feel a little bit like the responses have been interesting, right? Like even Rudy Gobert, like everyone is like coming out like we're very concerned for Draymond, and I do think there's because like as a society, especially a society that only has conversations on like algorithmically polarized social media platforms, we have to go all the way over here or all the way over here, right? There's no like middle ground. And I shared Tyler's sentiments. I think it's wonderful that we're taking a mental health first approach with Draymond, but I do feel like very much that is just sort of a buzzword for a lot of people that's being used to absolve it. And like, he's got mental health issues, moving on. And then like when he comes back, we'll say they fixed the mental health issues, you know, or whatever. And I there was some of that around, you know, what Ja Morant was doing too. Like, I mean, and we talked about it on the podcast. We most of us know friends who've done stupid stuff involving guns or involved or affiliated in some way. It doesn't like absolve them from not making stupid decisions, right? Like you know, you can't say like I have an addiction to showing a gun on IG Live. You can't say I have an addiction to smacking the shit out of foreign bigs in basketball games when I'm frustrated. So, but Hanif, I'm kind of curious for your thoughts on that. Like, we do have to create a society where mental health is more considered and factored in than it currently is, but it can't be like anytime someone is recklessly out of control, it's like, oh, it's a mental health issue. We're not going to think about that any further. We're just going to like move on, right? I mean, is there a middle ground there of some sort?
Well, I think it's building a foundation that one actually allows the person in question the autonomy to discuss what they're feeling or going through, instead of allowing and sometimes demanding the public to affix a broad spectrum of mental health crisis, capital M, capital H, capital C, upon someone else. Because who knows? We don't know anything about what Draymond has going on in his head. He gave that Ramona Shelburne interview last night or yesterday, that was not clarifying at all. Because he essentially was like, I go out there, sometimes I flip out, I don't know what time it is anymore. It's like, man, that doesn't tell me anything. Like that, and who knows? Maybe Draymond needs to go on some kind of journey that clarifies for himself whatever his mental health machinery is. But I don't think we aid him on that journey as people, as fans, as witnesses. We don't aid him on that journey. We don't enliven or enlighten that journey by just saying, well, he's got mental health issues, because we don't know. Like, we genuinely don't know. And it's hard because I think the nature of mental health in sport particularly is just so, like I remember when when people were like, when Ben Simmons was like, I'm struggling with mental health, people were like, I'll get the fuck out of here. It's like, no, I mean, like, I think something that motherfucker might really be struggling with his mental health if we're just like looking at the profile of his behaviors on the court. You know what I mean? And so I think this idea of, I don't like this player, or I'm frustrated with this player, or I don't want to believe anything this player is presenting as an excuse to. And I do think that mental health can't be used as absolution, but I also think that folks who are in a place to determine for themselves what they're going through need to have the autonomy to do that publicly. And I don't think the way that, I know that his fellow players and his peers are talking about him with this sense of concern, but I do worry outside. I mean, I can't lie. The Nurkic quote, that brother needs help. That graphic is like an all time.
Yeah,
that's going to be.
It's the classic meme right there.
Outside of that, like I'm wondering if this accumulation of like, oh, I hope he gets the help he needs, but without really verifying what that means, I don't know. I thought the Gobert thing was interesting, where he was like, I feel empathetic. Listen, all love for that. If someone had me in a chokehold like less than, like a fortnight ago, I don't know if I'm going to be. I don't know if I am going to reach a point of forgiveness that quickly.
Right. I'm shitting in his shoe personally. I mean, that's my go-to move immediately.
I think, I think Gobert knows that, killing him with kindness might be the way to get under Draymond's skin a bit too, right? Like, I think he knows that Draymond's a guy who likes his fire met with fire, you know what I'm saying? And he knows that if he comes out with like, bro, like, why do you care about me more than I care about you? Like, he knows that probably will dig at Draymond a bit too. But to your point, Hanif, like, these mental health issues, it's such an uphill battle to fight, because for so many people, if there is not a line of empathy that they can, traverse to from themselves to the person that's, in the discussion, then they have no, empathy for them. They have no, sympathy for them. They have no concern for them. And especially with professional athletes, it's like, bro, you're making $100 million. What are you sad about? What is going on with, like, you know what I mean? So that's always a battle to fight, especially with people, prominent people who are, athletes and such. So, but yeah, it just comes back to, like I said, I've never quite seen a suspension given out like this that is so focused on the rehabilitative aspect. So I'm very much invested in how this plays out over time.
Yeah.
Well, you make a great point on mental health and pro sports, which are in my opinion, they are inherently incompatible sort of things.
That's crazy
in many regards. But like John and I have talked about this quite a bit as like fathers. So I'm in Long Beach. I'm like 2 miles that way from where Earl Woods was like duct taping a golf club to his 3-year-old's hand. And I'm like 6 miles that way from where Venus and Serena's dad was basically doing the same thing with a tennis racket. If I saw that happening today, and I'm a sports writer in Long Beach, so I cover high school youth sports as well, I would see those parents and go, that is abusive and horrible, and I don't like it. And I know as a sports writer that, especially in individual sports, it's sort of the crucible that creates, like, there's not really an individual sport world champion that does not have, that has what we would consider to be a healthy journey mentally and regarding their sport. Michael Jordan, the only place that his brain has a context that succeeds is in a professional sport, right? It's not compatible with being a husband or a father or like necessarily a loving member of a community. But I think that is sort of the inherent challenge of sports for those of us who do care about
those of us who grew up. Those of us who grew up. Listen, this is wild that you bring that up, Mike, because recently, did I say this? I'll say it out. I'm sure she did not listen to this show, or I hope she does, but maybe she doesn't. I was recently on a date with someone who maybe is a listener, but perhaps not. If she is, you know what I mean?
I'm sure she doesn't listen to this show.
I say that because she was, There's a reason we're saying that I won't.
Yeah, we don't have to get into it for sure. I'm playing with you.
Nonetheless, I was explaining these drills my basketball coach had me do when I was a kid. Kind of like these passing drills where you're just in the gym and the lights are out and you have to the red light drills. We got to pass to the red light, And I was explaining it. And I was like, yeah, I had to do that when I was really small. And I was explaining how it went. And she was like, that sounds really fucked up. I was like, oh,
she was like, that sounds like the Red Room in Russia for like training ballerina.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And I was like, oh, that, I guess so. You know what I mean? But like all of us who grew up playing sports, like I grew up playing basketball. I grew up playing soccer. I grew up playing soccer at a very intense level. And when I think about just like some of the drills that my club soccer coach had me do, if I were to explain those out loud to a person now, they'd be like, that is fucking outrageous. But to me, those are things that define my, the shape that I took as an athlete. Also, if the person I went on a date with is a listener, hi, how are you doing? Have a great time. You know what I mean? If not, then you should become a listener.
That's how we get YouTube subscribers, one at a time.
So are y'all saying the mindset it takes to be successful in a sport doesn't give you the space to focus on mental health, or the culture of sports doesn't give you the space?
I think there's an unspoken understanding that you have to suppress that shit. Like talking drills. We all ran suicide drills. Like, do they even still call them shits that anymore? Like, and
we call them gassers, but in our heads we call them suicides.
Yeah, and the connotation there was, bro, you need to go out there and you need to give it your all, even if it kills you. Fuck how you personally feel comfortable, within yourself. Right. You need to go out there and try to fucking die. You know what I'm saying? To get this shit done to achieve the goals of us. So it's always been like an unspoken understanding that you got to suppress that shit and go out and lay it all out for your team.
I think me and you were actually watching the Heat play in New Orleans, and I think it was Battier who didn't chase a ball fast enough, and we were in the hotel, and I said, you need to die for that, Battier.
Remember that shit. You need to die. You said you need to die for that shit, fuck nigga. Vividly remember that. Because I needed that chip. Bro, I needed that chip.
Die for that loose ball, my nigga. But yeah, so, hey, that speaks to that. And I'm somebody that's in therapy and a mental health advocate. And I'm yelling, die for that when watching basketball. You know what I mean?
It's a different, listen, we all watched.
That Coggy D, as Mike says, you know what I mean? Good old Coggy D.
Good old Coggy D, boy.
We all watched The Last Dance, you know what I mean? And like there are parts of The Last Dance where we watched Michael Jordan's teammates look in the camera and say, this motherfucker was out of his mind. And then we watch Michael Jordan look in the camera and in so many words express to us, I was out of my motherfucking mind.
And we cried tears.
Exactly.
Like it's beautiful. That's fucking beautiful.
We watched that like that is beautiful. That is what the high. We watched Michael Jordan say, I invented a reason in my head to make an enemy out of this guy who complimented me. And we were like, that's what
LeBron Smith. We talked about him last episode. Yeah.
Right.
And so it's like this thing where I think, and I'm guilty of this as someone who has been in therapy at this point for all of my adult life. I look at sports as a container for this kind of psychosis, maybe, where competitiveness overwhelms all, and it's achieved. Michael Jordan in The Last Dance talking about like he didn't understand how someone could not play with the migraine. It's like, motherfucker, you are out of your mind.
Right.
And we can watch that and say, but he's also the greatest competitor who's ever lived, and so we can absolve. That is what real absolution is, when we can look at a guy like Michael Jordan or someone like Tom Brady or these folks and say, well, in order to get to that level, one has to have a brain that is not like any other brain. And the question is, at what cost? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, at what actual cost? Because it's different. Like, I'm just the guy who writes some shit in my house. You know what I mean? Like, I am not crying. I can look at The Last Dance and say, I admire that level of competitiveness. I don't want that for myself.
For sure.
Right. I want it on TV. Yeah. Right.
I want that on TV because we can treat it like it's and this is not great either, but we can treat it like it's like reality television, or we can treat it, there's the Kagi D, as we say. We can kind of separate ourselves from it. But like, I don't want that for myself. I don't want any level of competitiveness in my brain that would require me to be a kind of performer that Michael Jordan was. That level is frightening. And I think that is That's the two worlds of sport.
Where the rubber meets the road for me on this, and I'm not I don't have an answer for this question, and I'm not asking you guys to come up with an answer, but like I've got a son who plays baseball. He's pretty good. He has my brain when it comes to competitiveness and wanting to be perfect at things and all this other stuff. So I'm also his coach. We had a game this spring. He goes 3 for 4, 2 extra base hits. He threw a shutout inning pitching. Great game. We get back in the car. I'm like, hell yeah. Like, this is great. Like, this is what all the practice is for. Way to go. And he's pissed at himself because he just missed the right contact on the ball on the one at bat where he didn't get a hit. He's pissed at himself, like angry. And so I'm sitting there as his coach, like, this is fucking sick. Like, this kid, right? Like, this kid wants it. Like, this, and also as an adult, who knows, like, anything you want to do in life, you are going to have to be a little bit crazy about chasing after. If it's not baseball, like, good, right? Like, whatever it is. But then as his dad, I'm sitting there going, I know what the last 30 years of my life was fighting that desire to be like, I did really good at something. I could go home and rest now, or I could be really angry that it could have been a little bit better. And so as his dad, I'm sitting there like, buddy, you had a great game. Like, let's just go get some ice cream. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I don't know how to, like, I'm just sort of giving him his space and trying to provide some guidance, but it's like, I don't know what the answer is to that, particularly in the context of sports. In the context of he wants to be a college professor, let's go have some ice cream, right? You know, like, if you want a job that like 100,000 people have, cool. If you want a job that 100 people have, you probably have to be nuts enough to beat out the other 99,900 people, right? Like, I just don't know there isn't a correct answer to that question. But I don't know. That's who we're rooting for, is people who made that decision early in life, you know, like, it just went nuts. I mean, they're all crazy to some extent, truly.
Yeah. I just don't know how you can find any type of fine balance, any type of balance when you have to be fanatically obsessed. You know what I mean? I don't know, like, what a balance on that looks like. I will say that I think LeBron has probably handled it the healthiest of any of the all-time greats I've seen. Like, I mean, because, you know, to just boil shit down, like, right, the biggest knock we had on Kobe, if we're just boiling it down, is he didn't trust his teammates enough, right? Biggest knock we've got on Bron, if we boil that shit down, he trusts his teammates too much, right? Like, LeBron is someone who isn't necessarily burdening himself with all of his aspirations. He's someone who realizes that, you know, this is a team sport. I can't get it done without my guys, right? Like, he's not letting that shit, he's not, you know, taking on all the weight on his shoulders, right? And I think that is a pretty healthy way to, you know, kind of maneuver to that. And even then, Bron is still obsessive, right? Like, probably has the best fucking physical regimen we've ever seen.
You know, he goes to sleep at 7 p.m. Like, I mean, he gets all his teammates talking. He gets like 10 to 12 hours of sleep a night. As a father of 3, I don't care how rich you are, he gets 10 to 12 hours of sleep every night.
It's on the 10 hours of sleep a night.
How do you even?
Dwayne Wade has said he'll go to sleep at 6 o'clock like when they're trapped. Seriously, he would get in bed at 6 o'clock and not get up till 6 a.m. till he's working out. Like,
I feel like you have to take medicine to sleep that much. Like, you'd have to take something to. I physically do not have the ability to sleep that much, regardless of what I did in the day prior. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That's crazy. But I think that the team aspect is why he's more, you know, he's better in life, because like he's built the team around him for the things outside, because he understands the importance of having a team. You know what I mean? But when you're the type of person who's like, it's me, I have to do it, like a Kobe, like a Jordan, that's more difficult to step away from and operate differently. Like, you know what I mean? Like with him, with Bron, you know, knowing he needs a team on court and approaching the game in that way, even though he's a fanatic, you know, he's a fanatic when he comes to obsessing over the game. You can do that in life and be fine. Yeah. You can't be, you know, I'm that, you know, like, I got to drop 50, you know, LeBradford Smith, I'm coming for your ass, whatever the fuck his name is. You know, that's not going to translate well in your everyday life. So I think that's why Bron's been better off the court, is because that translates better, you know, off the court. You know what I'm saying?
Did you see that clip of Isaiah Thomas, not Zeke, you know, ITT, whatever you want to call him, of him crying when he would come into tears when he's talking about his time he spent with Bron in Cleveland? Did you see that?
Oh yeah, I saw that. I saw that. Yeah,
yeah. It was. You know,
what was he? What did he speak to? What did he speak to? In the clip?
He was just saying. He was saying, bro, like he was like, you know, I never saw someone so dedicated to basketball. He was like, when we had, you know, practices, he was there 2 hours later. When we had to go to the gym, he was there an hour late, an hour earlier, and left an hour after everybody did. Like, and he was like, you know, and we all know that shit did not go well for IT and Bron as a basketball player. And IT admitted that. He was like, shit ain't work out for us on the court. He was like, but just, you know, I'm a better man for having experienced this man's dedication. He's like, you know, we still homies to this day. So yeah, I'll drop that in the group chat. It's a really moving clip.
Damn.
I mean, Bron, the way he talks about it, Bron approaches a game like it's a 9 to 5. You know what I'm saying? Where like he comes in and does all the other things that need to be done off court before the game starts, like getting the work done and all that. Not every athlete approaches it that way. But I think like to be successful, like how like what Mike was talking about, like his son, like, you know, like Vinny tripping, you know, damn, to be successful, you almost got to find what you can do better at in sport, in any sports. It's like if it doesn't, as long, and I think being mad after the game, that's cool. But if by the time he's getting ice cream, he's okay, I think that's healthy. You know what I mean? Because unless you win the fucking genetic lottery, you know what I mean? You have to be obsessive to play a professional sport. You know, if that's what you want to do with your life. You know what I mean? And even if you win the genetic lottery, if you're going to be great at it, you have to win the genetic lottery and be obsessive, right? At this point.
Now,
you know what I'm saying?
Antonio Pierce used to tell the story about LeVar Arrington that when they played football together in Washington, they would be in film meetings, and it was a running joke that the coach at the end of the session would go, "And what's LeVar's job?" And LeVar would say, "Go get the quarterback." Those athletes don't really you don't really get to do that, even if you are you won the lottery or whatever, right? Like everyone at this point has to be obsessive. All right. We actually had Hanif on not to talk about mental health and balance in sports, but to talk about his Minnesota Timberwolves are having. It was a great conversation.
It was a needed conversation.
It was great.
The Minnesota Timberwolves are, at the time of recording, 18-5, .783 win percentage, a 4-game lead in the win column over the defending champion Denver Nuggets. The last time Hanif was on, you talked about not needing as an individual the normal cyclical sports thing of optimism and hope and then into disappointment, that you were comfortable just being a fan of a team that you were not expecting to necessarily go out and win a championship. And it does feel to me, I've been thinking of you this whole season, like it feels like this has been designed for you almost as a test. Like, how optimistic are you? How excited are you? How are you enjoying it? How is this season different from your previous fandom?
So honestly, I'd be lying to myself about some of this shit. Because
I respect that, bro.
Because they've been bad. You know, like when you root for a team that's been bad for so long, there's almost no point to be like, I need a championship. It's like, I just need to see a playoff series win. I mean, just like win more than one game in the playoffs. But also, you say that stuff. A funny thing happened this past weekend. So I'm a big fan. Columbus has a soccer team, Columbus Crew. They just won the MLS championship, right? And that was one of those things where not a lot of people expected that to happen. And before the game on Saturday, I was going to the game and I was telling people like, oh, you know, no matter if they win or not, I'm just so happy they got to this point. I'm just so happy I get to watch them play in a championship. I feel so great. And then when they won, I was like, listen, that shit was a lie. I'm definitely I am much happier right now. So I'd be like, I'm happier now. And so I'm trying to get myself I'm trying to walk both these lines where for a lot of Timberwolves fans, I know this still actually doesn't really feel real. You know what I mean? I think it's starting to feel a bit realer, but you know, after the first 15 games, I was like, this doesn't feel like it's actually happening. They've already won more games right now than they have won in total, like 4 seasons that I've been a fan of theirs. You know what I mean? Like in 2009, they won like 16 games total.
Sheesh.
And
y'all been through hell, bro. Good for you, I guess.
You know what I mean?
That's
like,
crazy. I would have been quit.
I had to watch like Alexi Shved. You know what I mean? Like I had to watch Luke Ridnour playing point guard. You know, it's like
took Johnny Flynn over Steph. Like
yeah.
Johnny was. I love Johnny at Syracuse though, but
Johnny Flynn was a hooper. I think.
Yeah, Luke Ridnour was good too, but not a Luke Ridnour led team is rough. That's a rough watch.
It's funny. So I was at the first game of the season. I went up to Toronto to see them play in Toronto, and they lost. And they lost in a way that was like, oh no, you know, same old Timberwolves. You know what I mean? They lost like Cat played awfully, Ant shot too much and shot poorly. And as I was leaving the arena, I mean, there's not a lot of I feel like the state of Timberwolves fandom is down bad if I'm one of the most visible Timberwolves fans. But I was leaving the arena and a Toronto fan recognized me and started like, and they started like yelling, not mean yelling, but like shit talking in the kind of player. It's like, oh, it's not y'all's year, ha, that type shit. And I was like, and I was walking back to my hotel like, damn, that nigga might be right. But now, I hope that person's a listener.
That's what I was going to say.
You got a better chance
there. A listener.
Yeah.
Because like, listen, I'm not much of a trash talk with strangers, folks. But when Toronto empties out the cupboard and that motherfucker's rooting for Malachi Flynn, and the Timberwolves are #1 in the West, I pray I see that person again. So like, there's an element too where early in the season I was like, no, they had that loss to the Hawks that was really rough, where they blew like a 25-point lead. So there was a lot of kind of same old Timberwolves stuff for me. And Cat started poorly. Cat started the season really bad.
Like the first 5 games. Then he got hot though. Then he turned it all the way up. Yeah.
And so I don't really know. Now I'm kind of in this euphoric haze where I'm watching this team that does not feel like any other Timberwolves team I've seen in my life, where the defense seems for real. I think, all the talk is about Anthony Edwards, which I understand. The Cat's also doing things that people have been asking him to do for his whole career. Mm-hmm. He's defending both on the perimeter and in the post, and he's not getting in a ton of foul trouble. He did foul out the other night, but not getting a ton of foul trouble. He is creating his shots off the dribble and getting in the lane and using that floater that he has really well. He's not relying on just throwing up threes from all over the place. He's passing out of double teams. He's kind of doing these things that people have been, myself included, as a fan of his, have been frustrated with his inability to do in his early career. Rudy is back playing like defensive player of the year level defense. And there are holes. There are some concerns. I'm a little bit worried about the point guard position because Mike Conley, I love him and I love watching him play. There's no way he's playing all 82 games.
Guy right there, yeah. Mm-hmm. But Conley's been hooping though, man. Like
he's been hooping.
I think he's got like 139 assists and only like 22 turnovers or some shit like that. He's been going crazy. But where are you at with Rudy, right? Because it looked like for a minute, like no exaggeration, that might have been one of the worst trades ever last season. And now that shit's coming together, bro. And he's looking like, the Rudy who might get his 5th Defensive Player of the Year.
I still wish, I don't know how, this is a big conflict for me because I would like a couple of those picks back. Like for real. I think that is going to, if I'm talking about living in the moment and loving the moment right now, that's really hard this year because this team is not going to be this team in 2 years. They can't afford everybody and they have no picks. And so I really have to savor this year, and Rudy especially this year, because in 2 years from now, I don't really know what this team's future looks like, because you will have probably Ant and probably Jaden McDaniels, and I don't know who else is there. Rudy feels like he will either Rudy or Cat or both will not be. And so I don't think the trade is bearing itself out, especially because I think some of those Utah players, particularly Walker Kessler, has seemed to kind of hit a wall. I still think Walker Kessler is a good player, but I think what he showed last year and how he's played this year, I think he's maybe taken a step back. And so I feel a little bit better about that. And but I would love at least one of those picks back. There's no matter how good I feel about this season, there's no ignoring the fact they gave up too much. They just gave up too much for him, especially when you look at the market for what other players have gotten since that trade. They gave up too much. And I think how it has benefited the team is that it's forced everyone to play differently. And so Pat becomes a more versatile player because he has to play next to Rudy. Anthony Edwards becomes a better passer because he has to play alongside Rudy and figure out how to pass out of these double teams. Jaden McDaniels becomes an even better defender on the wing because he trusts Rudy behind him. You know what I mean? So there's some benefits that will play long-term dividends, but when I think about this team in 2 years, I worry.
Yeah. Rudy's for sure making good on his end. But I mean, from the very jump, I think a lot of people didn't like the trade because the trade felt like, okay, this is the last piece we need to be a champion. And no, absolutely not. Y'all need a little bit more, right? Like that was what that trade looked like. And it, they're a young team on the rise who are not just Rudy Gobert away from being a champion. They need some more pieces. So I definitely understand your concern there because I feel the same.
I think when it comes to pieces, I think also they needed a different personality to lead that team. Like Ant Edwards as the man is better than Cat as the man on that team. You know what I mean? I feel like Cat doesn't have the personality that people would want to like get behind or just follow to. You know what I mean? Everybody loves Ant. You know, interviewing Cat, I'm talking about Ant. He talked about Ant like he's the fucking man. You feel what I'm saying? And so I think that helped a lot. Ant taking that step and it being Ant's team. And I think that adds to the energy. And I mean, that's not taking anything away from Cat. Cat's fucking incredible. He's still 50, 40, 90. He said, you know, had a really good year other than the first, you know, that start. But yeah, I think that also helped having a person that is fit to lead a squad that people want to follow, you know?
I also think like they're in a unique situation with that trade because most teams aren't in a position where their existing players will give them another piece, right? But like Ant's development is going to effectively add a better player each year, right? For the next few years. Yeah. So I think that like that has to be part of the calculus. But I was thinking about you. I've been thinking about you after that trade because I had a friend who's like, they massively overpaid all this other stuff. And I thought about one of the stats you said the last time you were on. I was like, they haven't won, man. Like, so if they overpay and they win 2 playoff series and then they suck again, well, they had a year where they got to enjoy winning 2 playoff series, right? Like Lakers fans, Celtics, like you take that stuff for granted. But if you're rooting for a team that, like you said, you followed them closely in a year in which they won, like imagine being a Pistons fan right now, right? Like, there are people watching every minute of those games, though. There are not a lot of them, but there are some people doing that. So, like, if you get the experience of winning some in April, then great, right? You know, like that has to be worth something, even though it's not how we account for success in the way that we talk about the NBA.
One of my dear friends, the brilliant poet Matthew Olsman, is a Pistons fan, like diehard Pistons fan. One of those people who watches every minute of every game, and we're in a group chat together, and I feel like the euphoric high that I'm on is really just counterbalanced by the fact that every night he knows the motherfuckers are getting their asses beat. And there's kind of like I look at the Pistons schedule because at this point I'm like, I just want to see him. I just need to see the Pistons win a game. It has to happen. And I look at their schedule and I'm like, I just don't see a win there. You know what I mean? Like I just don't see a right. And if they go 2 months without winning a game, I just don't know how. Somebody's got to get fired from somewhere. I mean, I don't know if it's Monty. I don't know if someone has to lose a job. Right. Like it just can't. You can't not win a game for 2 months.
I mean, you would think Tyler and John said that they should let the fans rush the court after their first win.
Stand on that.
I love that idea.
Great idea, Tyler. Great idea. Great idea. Rodney, if you lose 2 months straight, I think you should suspend the team indefinitely. Not from a place that you did something wrong, but just take some time for yourself.
Some rehabilitative justice.
Mental health break, bro. Right? You feel what I'm saying? Like, dog, it's rough out here. We see you struggling. We gonna give y'all a week off or something. I think, hey man, that 2 months straight is crazy, bro. Yeah, crazy.
They got the Sixers again tonight, which probably is gonna be a loss.
Cooked.
They could maybe. I think they got the Jazz coming up. They could maybe sneak a win in there. But either way, it's like, you know, as someone, again, the thing about the Timberwolves, I watched them through a lot of years where they just had aimless rosters. Where I would look at the roster and say, "This is just a bunch of guys." You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I look at the Pistons right now, and it's like, well, there's talent there, but it's just a bunch of guys.
Yep.
Like, you know, Jalen Barron, and I like him, and I like.
Cade is taking a leap, but it's for nothing. You know what I mean?
It's for nothing.
For not.
I like Jaden Ivey, maybe, you know, but it's just like these are just some guys who can't really. They're not really. There's not cohesive. I kind of don't like Isaiah Stewart as much as other people. So, and there's a way that you can make some guys work. I mean, the Orlando Magic are just a bunch of guys, and it's working. And I think the Pistons are kind of what the Timberwolves have been for much of my life. Where I think where the Timberwolves are different now is that they found an identity. People actually thought they found an identity in the year of Pat Bev. And they kind of halfway found that identity, but it wasn't real. It was just fleeting, performative. And I think Pat Bev is fine.
It was Pat Bev. It was Pat
But he's kind of performative himself, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like this Pat Bev thing, and it was just like him projecting his whole thing onto the team. This year, like there's an actual identity around the Timberwolves that is and I think a lot of it too, Chris Finch deserves some flowers. Although, you know, a funny thing about Chris Finch to me is that he's one of those people who always looks like his face always looks like he just got word that his wife is divorcing him. Like, no matter, even when he's happy, there was like a graphic.
There's a sadness to his eyes.
He has resting tragedy face. Yeah.
There was like a graphic the Timberwolves put up when he won Coach of the Month or whatever, and he was smiling in the graphic. But even when he was smiling, it looked like he had just heard some really sad news. And so I don't know what is going on in his life, but he's a hell of a coach, though. You know what I mean? Like, I'm glad, you know. Hopefully he's actually not getting divorced. I made that joke like twice, and I hope he's not actually like in the throes of his marriage falling apart. But if he is, he's pouring himself into the game in a beautiful way.
So you mentioned that this team has an identity, and we talked about the 03-04 Timberwolves. And I remember, like, you know, we all knew that they were not going to be a championship team, but they were fun. They had some guys on there who were like fan favorites, like Cassell with the big nut celebration. You had, you know, Spree with the with the twisted up braids, looking like the fucking flying dog from Never Ending Story and shit. Even fucking Fred Hoiberg coming off the bench lighting shit up, right?
Love Fred Hoiberg.
So like, yeah. So like, do you have a fan favorite? You know, someone who's like not a guy like not Ant or Cat or Rudy. Like, do you have a fan favorite on there right now?
I like Troy Brown Jr. And I like Troy Brown Jr. because I like that this is kind of a redemption arc for him. I like a redemption arc in the NBA. Last night the Timberwolves played the Mavs, and I got to see Dante Exum, who's been playing well, and that's cool. Like, it's cool to see a guy like Dante Exum who was out of the league, and it's come back in. And Troy Brown he bounced around a lot. He was a high pick, bounced around a lot, didn't work on a couple teams. And he's really playing well in Minnesota. Same for Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I love Nickeil Alexander-Walker. The Timberwolves have always had these guys, even when they've been bad, even in the lean years, they've had guys that I've latched onto and really enjoyed watching. And in terms of, you know, I don't know if this is a championship team. You never really know. I don't think you really know that until the playoffs.
How do you feel though?
I don't want to see the Nuggets in the playoffs. So I would like to. I think this is a team that can get to the Western Conference Finals. I really do. I think that they will run into some problems in the playoffs as they have in the past, because in the playoffs they'll run up against teams that'll just switch everything. And I think, you know, Cat struggles in those scenarios. He was better. I think the narrative about Cat not being good in the playoffs is maybe a little unfair. He was very good in that Memphis series. The team collapsed in that Memphis series. The Cat was actually pretty good. He was very bad against Denver, and against the Rockets back in the Jimmy year was his first time out, and he wasn't great. But I think a struggle with him is that teams just switch everything on him, and he sometimes just can't find his offense there. So I worry a little bit about the playoffs. I worry about them. In the West is really jagged this year. There's a lot of shit you got to go through. You got to go through Oklahoma City, and that Oklahoma City team is like not the Oklahoma City team of last year. And I think the Wolves can make the Western Conference Finals if shit shakes out where they can avoid Denver until the Western Conference Finals. I still think, I know their regular season so far has been a little shaky. I still think Denver is better than everybody in 7 games. I just don't see anyone in the West, at least, who can beat Denver in 7 games. It just, you know, if they're healthy, if Jamal Murray is Jamal Murray. But I do think I see them winning the playoff series. The Timberwolves at least winning 1. I see them definitely able to do that. I think they could win 2 if shit shakes out the right way. Like, I think there's a big gap between these first 4 teams, maybe 5 teams, and everybody else below them.
All right, well, Hanif, thank you so much for taking the time to hop on with us. Everyone, pre-order. There's Always This Year on Basketball and Ascension. His next book coming out in March. We're for sure going to have him back to talk about that.
I'm excited to come back, by the way. I got to make sure y'all get a copy. Hope my publicist was like, they got me like embargo. They're like, you can't talk to anybody till the book comes out. So with my publicist, who actually is a listener to this show,
what up, publicist?
Hear this.
What up?
They're gonna hear this shit and be like, I told that motherfucker. But the Timberwolves, I was like, yo, the Timberwolves might not be good in March.
Gotta seize the moment, man.
The Timberwolves might not be that. They might not be good enough in March to talk about. So I appreciate. Hopefully, y'all have
there might not
around,
be next year for the Timberwolves.
There might not be next year for these motherfuckers, and so I have to make sure I'll get a copy of the book. I've been thinking about y'all and other folks who have been kind enough to talk ball with me, because I feel like early on in my writing career, I never got to talk about ball because everyone was kind of just like, oh, you're the music guy. But realistically, you know, I spend as much time thinking about ball as I do anything else. So I really appreciate y'all for always allowing me to kind of come on here and chop it up a bit.
You actually gave us some advice, I think, on accident the first time we had you on, and we talked about music and we talked about publishing and your career and stuff. And at the end of it, you were like, I really wanted to just talk about basketball and sneakers. Like,
right. I thought we was going bullshit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So for the three of us, we were like, so just because someone comes on who's like been, won national book awards and stuff, like we probably should just like let them come hang out with their friends. Like that's what people want to do on the show,
Also, you're like one of three people that I tell my wife we were talking to, and she's like, "Yay!" Like she actually said, "Yay!" That's what she said. Like she's 12 when I told her we were interviewing you. So, yeah,
that's great.
You're welcome anytime, man.
Thanks for taking the time, bro. And hopefully the Timberwolves. Hopefully it's not just an interview about your book. Hopefully in February, March, good. Hopefully the Timberwolves are still worth talking about for sure.
For sure.
No doubt. Appreciate y'all as always. We'll talk soon.
Yes, sir.